Welcome to the Radiant Visalia podcast. Join us at one of our two services, 9 a.m. and 10:45 a.m. Download the Church Center app or visit our website, radiantvisalia.com, to stay connected with us. All right, enjoy.
There is a heavenly city that I'm compelled to find.
I am glad to be home and in this family here on this Sunday. If you're new here, I lead here. My name's Travis Daniel Aiklin, and I am one of the pastors. But I've had a wild month of travel in the last 6 weeks. I've been in South Africa and Mexico and India, and then I went to the country of Texas as well. Maybe the weirdest place I went. But really thankful for the opportunity to be a part of what God's doing and just see what He's doing around the world. I always come back with souvenirs, things that I'm carrying from abroad back here to this church. I believe that I receive so much when I go, but I think we receive so much when I go. The relationships that are made, the perspective that's gained, all really helpful for our little thing here. But I am so happy to be back in our little thing here. It was difficult to transition from India to Texas. In India, beef is outlawed. And then in Texas, vegetarians are outlawed. I went from no meat to eating myself sick on barbecue. And that's not a confession. I'm not repenting of that, actually. I know I'm not the only one that's been busy. Yeah. This has been a busy time for most. Pretty hectic as the school year wraps up. I know there's a lot to do, and so really thankful that you've made time to be here, make this a priority, be here with us. I stumbled across this statistic that the average American works 137 more hours a year than those working in Japan, which I think we have an idea that the Japanese have a strong work ethic. The average American works 137 more hours a year than those working in Japan. They work 260 more hours a year than those working in Britain. Rubbish! Yeah. And here's the best one. We work 499 more hours a year than the French. Man, lot of cigarette breaks. Americans take the shortest paid vacations of anyone in the world. 37% of us take fewer than 7 days of vacation a year. And I have a mixed, maybe when you read these statistics, you feel kind of mixed about it too, because in some ways I read these things and doesn't our heart just swell with pride? I mean, especially in having to do with the French, it just swells with pride. And I think I've been guilty of, and I know we've been guilty of, wearing busy as a badge, because nothing says you matter quite like being busy. So we have it, and we own it, and we flaunt it, and we say things like sleep is for the weak. It's for the French. I will. Is there anyone from France here that I've just completely offended? I'll stop. You know, worse than that is that this, in many ways, the church has followed culture in this. So we actually have very sanctified ways of saying this. I'll sleep when I'm in heaven. The devil never takes a day off. So neither do we. The problem is, last time I checked, he loses. So maybe we shouldn't model our kind of efforts on his. The question I found myself asking, so we do these things. We're number one. We've done it. At what cost? What pays? Because you know, if you're old enough, there's a cost to everything. What pays? More importantly, probably, who pays for us to be number one? I bumped into this Henry Nouwen quote. He himself was a busy man, wrote a number of books and taught at really prestigious universities. He said, "We are not rest-filled people who occasionally become restless. We are restless people who sometimes find rest." And I think that's unfortunately true, especially when we look at these things here. And just let me for a second describe restfulness. Restfulness being margin. That's that thing between how much you have and how much you're spending. There's like this thing there. Slowness. The beginning of my sermons are always an exercise in slowness, huh? Just trying to get my bearings here. Quiet. Deep relationship. Time alone. Delight. Enjoyment. Clarity. Gratitude. Then there's that thing called contentment. Trust. Working from love and work as a contribution as opposed to work as accumulation and accomplishment. Work from love as opposed to working for love. Restlessness looks like anxiety. Ever had that? Discontentment. Greed. Busyness. Hurry. Noise. Isolation. Crowds that we're in right now. Distraction. Envy. Confusion. I fear that I find myself in one of those categories and rarely in the other. How about you? How's it going for you? So we're in a series here as a church on holy habits. And we're talking about spiritual disciplines. And spiritual disciplines for us are practices based on the lifestyle of Jesus that enable us to do this simply. Be with Jesus. Be like Jesus. And do what Jesus did. These spiritual disciplines provide a place for us to encounter the power and presence of God. We've spoken in the weeks leading up to this that we have to embrace discipline in order to be a disciple of Jesus. Because disciple means disciplined one. That's the etymology of the word. You can plot all the spiritual disciplines in Scripture using these 4 quadrants. Can we put that slide up? So there are disciplines that we do alone. There are disciplines that we do in community. There are disciplines that invite us to abstain, and there are disciplines that invite us to engage. When I say spiritual disciplines, though, we think top left, don't we? All the things that you're invited to do that require you to abstain and isolate yourself. That's usually what we think of. If you're an introvert, you probably think that the more challenging things lie in one of the other quadrants. But for the most part, when we think about a disciplined life, you think about the monk meditating. He hasn't eaten, it doesn't matter. He's so sustained, so still. He's quieted himself. And that's usually what we think of. What I find, though, is that other things require just as much discipline. It's a discipline for me to celebrate. I naturally and easily think about what needs to change. I'll come away with from this service. Thousands of amazing things will happen. I will go home thinking about the few things that didn't. I will speak to hundreds of people, and I will think about the empty seats. Who could be there? Who should be there? I haven't seen them in a while. These are all the conversations that I have while I'm talking to you. Celebration is a discipline. And I find that another very difficult discipline, it requires discipline to rest. It ain't easy to rest. The Bible would say it this way: we have to work to enter His rest. Stopping is not easy when we are used to compulsively going. So for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to seek to help your summer. I'm here for the next 2 weeks to serve your summer by talking about the discipline of Sabbath. This week, simply the what and the why. What is Sabbath? Why was Sabbath commanded? Next week, how we keep Sabbath. And more importantly, are we supposed to keep Sabbath? I thought that was an Old Testament thing. I thought that was a Jewish command. Is this for us? Is this for the church? And how should we do it? So first up, what? What is Sabbath? The word Sabbath comes from the Hebrew word Shabbat, which means to stop. Stop. It means to cease. It means specifically to stop working. It refers to doing nothing related to work for a 24-hour period each year, each month, each week, actually, as it turns out. The Sabbath is best understood as a command. It is commanded, as we'll read. But I believe that it's also an invitation. That it's not just a duty that we've been commanded to perform. But Isaiah 58 says we should delight ourselves in this. It's a gift. It's the fourth commandment of the 10 Commandments. If you're new to church, you probably know 10 Commandments, kind of a big deal, right? People fight over where they should be. Exodus 20, here we have, we'll read all the 10 Commandments. It's a good refresher because I'm not sure I could name all 10. So let's just read these together, remind ourselves of what I think could be called the 10 best ways. The 10 best ways. God spoke all these words. I like that it starts with that. Not some of these words. God spoke all these words in Exodus 20. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. 1. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above or on the earth beneath or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me, keep my commands. Number 3, you shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name. Number 4, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals. Your chickens get a day off. Nor any foreigner residing in your towns. This is so powerful because we all know that in order for us to rest, someone else usually needs to work. And he's saying, no. You're not a slave and you should not enslave others. 4, in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, but he rested on the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. 5, honor your father and mother so that they may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. Number 6, you shall not murder. Anyone ever thought it was interesting, the connection between those two? Honor your father and mother. Don't kill them. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male or female servant, his ox or his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. There it is, the 10 best ways. Commandment number 4 regarding the Sabbath is the longest of the 10. Not sure if you noticed that. If the 10 commandments were a pie chart, which is something I can't make, number 4 would make up 37% of the pie. It's the bridge between the first 3 commands that have to do with our relationship with God and the last 6 commands that have to do with our relationship with one another. There's something of a connection here between our relationship with God and our relationship with others. It's the only commandment with an explanation behind it. Did you notice that? It's the only commandment where they have to say, and this is why. And it is the only spiritual discipline commanded. Not fasting, not praying, not serving, stopping. Stopping. As I read that, I started to think this could potentially be the holiest of our habits. We are not just talking about the holy habits, we have entered the Holy of Holies. This is the holiest habit, the only one commanded. But here's what's interesting, and I think this is really important in the conversation about how we keep Sabbath. Even prior to giving the 10 commandments, the people of God were invited to practice Sabbath. Before the 10 commandments showed up on the scene, the people of God were invited to trust God by resting, ceasing, stopping. You'll notice that the command starts with remember. You don't say remember to a group of people that never heard it in the first place. When you say remember, you're hearkening back to something. I've already said this to you, but remember this. Remember the Sabbath day, keep it holy. So it's not just a command, it's an invitation, and that both command and invitation was given earlier in Exodus 16. Exodus 16, you can turn there if you want, but I'm going to have to paraphrase it. God's feeding people from the sky. Manna is falling from heaven, and the people are to go out and collect it daily. They're only allowed to collect enough for the day, every day, except for one day where they're charged, I want you to go out on the 6th day, and I want you to collect twice as much so that you can rest on the 7th day, so that you don't have to go out and collect. It was a practice before it was a law. It was a principle even before the law was given. Exodus 16:26. 6 days you're to gather it, but on the 7th day, the Sabbath, there will not be any. Nothing will fall. Nevertheless, some of the people, probably some of the people living in scarcity, they went out on the 7th day to gather it, but they found none. And then the Lord said to Moses, how long will you refuse to keep my commands and my instructions? It is a command, it is an instruction. But then he says, bear in mind that the Lord has given you the Sabbath. It's a gift, not just a command. This is an invitation. The Lord's given this to you. He gave you a day off. Take him up on it. The Lord's given you a Sabbath. That's why on the 6th day, he gives you bread for 2 days. Everyone is to stay where they are on the 7th day. No one goes out. So the people rested on the 7th day. I love it. It's like, trust him. Stay in your tent. You know, you work with that guy, that gal. It's like her day off, and then she waddles into the office, or, you know, and it's like, go home. We got it. This is the Lord saying, I gave the people a day off. Told them I would provide. Told them to trust me. Tuck into your tent. Quit scrambling out of fear of the future. Trust me and stop. Trust me enough to rest. It is a form of worship. It is both a command and it's a gift that we're to remember. Why? Why is this commanded? The 10 Commandments are given in 2 different places, not to equal 20 commandments. There's still only 10 commandments, but the 10 Commandments are given in 2 different places. Exodus 20, which we just read, and then Deuteronomy 5. And they're almost exactly the same. In fact, if you read them quickly, you might just think it's just being restated, especially since Deuteronomy means the second law or the law once over. Deuteronomy is essentially the law given 40 years later to the next generation. Exodus 20, Deuteronomy 5. These are the 2 places where the 10 Commandments are stated. And they're like twins. And at first glance, you can't tell twins apart. Right, Bob? Right, Ben? It's like, how many times have you been called Ben? How many times have you been called Bob? But as you get to know Ben and Bob, you start to realize, like, no, they're different. And now I feel like it would be impossible for me to mix the 2 up. Because you spend time with them, you know? And you notice little things. You notice different things about them. These 2 passages are like twins. You spend time with them, you spot the differences between the 2. And both, I believe, answer the why of Sabbath. Why we stop, why we cease. Exodus 20, here it is. I'll read. I'm standing these twins up in front of you, and you can spot the differences. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, but he rested on the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Deuteronomy 5:12. Observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy, as the Lord your God has commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your ox, nor your donkey, or any of your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns, so that your male and female servants may rest as you do. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out of there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore, the Lord your God has commanded you to observe the Sabbath day. I'm sure you've noticed that the Exodus account ties the why of Sabbath keeping to creation. Because God created in 6 days, and on the seventh, He stopped. And that's why we are to observe the Sabbath. And then the Deuteronomy account connects the why of Sabbath to liberation. You've been redeemed. So the Exodus account looks back to Eden and says this is why we do this. The Deuteronomy account looks back to Egypt and says this is why we Sabbath. This is why we observe this day. So I want to start here with the Exodus account. And essentially the why of Sabbath is that God has built a rhythm into creation. I think another strong case for why we should keep the Sabbath is that before it was law, it was built in as a rhythm into creation. You can deny it if you want. You really can. But like gravity, deny or defy it at your own peril. I'm not very old, and there are others here who are older, but I know that either you choose rest or rest chooses you. It's like gravity. Try getting away from it. Either you choose the discipline of rest or you will be disciplined with rest. Come on. Anybody here over 50 going, that's it? That's happened to you multiple times. Either you lie down or He will make you lie down. It's like, so we can discuss, should a Christian keep it? How has Christ transformed it? Hey, that's all fine. In the end, it's built in. This rhythm is built into the fabric of creation. Ignore it at your own peril. In the beginning, Genesis 1 is where we get the creation account. God created the heavens and the earth, and then for 5 days He creates amazing things. And then on the 6th day, in verse 26, God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created mankind in His own image. In the image of God, He created them. Male and female, He created them. God blessed them, and then He said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the sky and every living creature that moves on the ground, and live in Texas." And then God said, "I will give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They'll be yours for food, not weed. And to all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds in the sky, and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food." And it was so. And God saw that all that He had made was very good. And there was evening and there was morning on the 6th day. The beginning of Genesis 2. Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in their vast array. By the 7th day God had finished the work He had been doing. So on the 7th day He rested from all His work. Then God blessed the 7th day and made it holy, because on it He rested from all the work of creating what He had done. Don't miss this. This is the why of Sabbath. We rest, we stop, we cease, because God rested. So can it be for the weak? God rested. God took a day. God rested. It's profound. Well, you don't understand. I've got small kids. Oh, God's got a few of those too. God rested. Oh, I got a lot on my plate this week. Oh, like forming the Himalayas? God rested. Oh, well, I just can't drop this ball. Yeah, God can't drop the ball either. Like, God rested. That's it. He rested. And in this way, we mimic him in order to remember that we're not him. And we embrace appropriate smallness. We remember that we're creation, not creator. God works 6 days and then he rests, right? How many days did Adam work before Adam rested? Adam was formed on the sixth day. Adam's formed on the sixth day. Again, God accomplishes quite a bit in a week. It's quite a week. Creation in all its vast array, I think is the terminology, has a good week. He slayed it. And then he's like, work done, I'm going to bless it, I'm going to complete it. On the sixth day, he creates Adam. And then he creates Adam, and he gives Adam this insane job description. Can you imagine showing up your first day on the job, and someone says, what I want you to do is you're going to come over here and fill the earth and subdue it. Adam's like, whoa. How much do I get paid? I want you to name every animal. That's what we're going to do too. So Adam wakes up on the seventh day. All right. Big day for me. Big job description. What are we doing today, Lord? Just resting. Just enjoying it, man. Oh, there's plenty to do. Eventually, we'll fill the whole earth and subdue it. Today, we rest. Before Adam ever rests from his work, he's invited to rest in God's work. You rest in my work. It's not a bonus for 6 hard days. Adam doesn't give it 6 hard days. He didn't earn it. He didn't get it because the work was complete. It was a gift right from the start. And so Adam now goes forth into his week, working from a place of rest, not working for his rest. And this is huge. The implications of this are huge for me, for us, because we think if we get it done, then we'll rest. And then we don't rest because it's never done. And so the order is stop. Stop. Trust me. Work from a place. Before you rest from your work, you rest in my work. The Jewish Sabbath starts at 6 p.m. That means the first thing you do on Sabbath is eat and then sleep. That's the first thing you do. Enjoy it. The Jewish Sabbath was not a reward. It's not a bonus. The Jewish Sabbath was not accruing vacation days because you proved yourself. The Deuteronomy account, we'll end here. Observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy, as the Lord your God has commanded. 6 days you shall labor and work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord. Because remember, in verse 15, you were slaves in Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore, the Lord your God has commanded you to observe the Sabbath day. Why do we Sabbath? Well, it's a rhythm built into creation, and God rested. Why do we Sabbath? We're no longer slaves. We're sons and daughters. We've been liberated. Remember, you were slaves for a while. You didn't have a choice. You didn't get to decide, I think I'll take a day off. You had to work so that others could rest. Remember your taskmasters. Remember how they drove you. Remember how they beat you. Remember how hard it was to fulfill their expectations. Remember that. And then remember that I've liberated you, I delivered you, I saved you with an outstretched arm. Remember that on the Sabbath day. You're free men and women. You can stop. Slaves don't rest. Slaves can't rest. They have no freedom to rest. Rest is a condition of freedom. You've been set free. The Bible has a word for Sabbath minus any work. That's laziness. The Bible also has a word for work minus any Sabbath. That's slavery. What's driving you? What's pushing you? Who's the taskmaster cracking the whip? I just want to read this paragraph. I think it's important. This is just a look at a day in the life of an Israelite, of a Hebrew, of the people that are being told, remember this and never do this again. Listen to this. This would be Exodus 5. Moses and Aaron, who are leading this liberation, they go to Pharaoh because the people are enslaved in Egypt. And they said, this is what the Lord God of Israel says, let my people go so that they may hold a festival to me in the wilderness, so that they can worship. Pharaoh said, who's the Lord, that I should obey him and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go. So then they said, the God of the Hebrews has met with us. Now let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God, or he may strike us with plagues or with the sword. But the king of Egypt said, Moses and Aaron, why are you taking people away from their labor? Get back to your work. And then Pharaoh said, look, the people of the land are now numerous, and you are stopping them from working. That same day, Pharaoh gave this order to the slave drivers and the overseers in charge of the people. You're no longer to supply the people with straw for making bricks. Let them go and gather their own straw. But require them to make the same number of bricks as before. Don't reduce the quota. They're lazy. And that's why they're crying out, let us go and sacrifice to our God. Make the work harder for the people so that they keep working and they don't pay attention to the lies. Wow, what a word. And then the slave drivers and the overseers went out and said to the people, this is what the Pharaoh says, I will not give you any more straw. You do the same job without the material to do it. Go and get your own straw wherever you can find it, but your work will not be reduced at all. So the people scattered all over Egypt to gather stubble to use for straw. And the slave drivers kept pressing them, saying, complete the work required of you for each day, just as when you had straw. And Pharaoh's slave drivers beat the Israelite overseers and had them appointed, demanding, why haven't you met your quota of bricks yesterday or today as before? Then the Israelite overseers went and appealed to Pharaoh. Why have you treated your servants this way? Your servants are given no straw, yet we're told make bricks. Your servants are being beaten, but the fault is with your own people. And then Pharaoh said, lazy. That's what you are, lazy. That is why you keep saying, let us go and sacrifice to the Lord. Now get to work. You will not be given any straw, yet you must produce your full quota of bricks. A day in the life. Man. I mean, I know you got it coming on Monday, but it's not like that. And this is what God's saying. Remember your taskmasters? Remember those guys? The guys with the whips, the guys with unreal expectation. Remember their relentless demands. Remember their accusations. You're lazy. That's why you want to do this. Remember those guys who drove you, oppressed you, enslaved you, harassed you? Remember those guys? Remember that God drowned them all? Remember that He crushed them? Remember the gnats, remember the frogs, remember the blood, remember the sea that was parted, remember your liberation, remember your redemption. Remember that? Don't ever go back to slavery. Don't ever go back to those taskmasters. The idea is this: don't receive again the yoke of slavery. Don't take it up. This is why you Sabbath. It's rebellion. It's resistance. It's remembering that we've been liberated and set free. We're no longer slaves. Don't be enslaved again with that yoke. Don't receive what the Lord has removed. And don't piece back together, don't put back together what God has smashed. Don't do that. Remember, you were once slaves. You're slaves no more. Don't place yourself in the yoke that God threw off with His own outstretched arm. Don't take that on. Don't receive it. And this is the best part. It's like as if we're being told here, you now work for the God who created the weekend. That's your boss. That's your boss now. The boss who created the weekend. It wasn't a thing, and He made it a thing. Yeah. I was like, well, we've got these taskmasters who drive us, and we have a God who's saying, could you please stop? Trust me. Enjoy, rest, delight, feast. Oh, who doesn't want to work for that guy? We now work for the boss who goes, go home. Go home. I got this. Well, are you sure? I was just thinking that I should probably go home. Go home. This whole thing works without you. Go home to your family. Enjoy your life. See you on Monday. Who doesn't want to work for that guy? You're not a slave. And you're not to enslave others. And you bear the image of God. And He's Lord of the harvest. He has a plan for your life, but He's also the Lord of the Sabbath. He has a plan to rest you. What? Yeah. Your mind, says the Lord. You're no longer enslaved to what others think. Life is more than accomplishment and accumulation. It's more than that. Why do we work the way we do? Fear, probably. some of it. A fear of the future, a fear of disappointing. For some of us, there's identity in what we do. Some of us, it's to cover our shame, to prove that we're of value and that we're okay and that we're going to amount to something. It's to overcome a deep insecurity in us, a sense of insignificance that we battle with. We work to cover our shame. We work to be loved. The invitation of Sabbath is to work from a place of knowing that we're valued, knowing that we're loved. I'm aware at this point, just to conclude our sermon, that there are men and women still here who are still serving a taskmaster. You're still being driven. You're still being whipped. There's some sort of voice of accusation that keeps you not just on the treadmill, but turning up the speed on the treadmill. And you've never come out of slavery. You've never experienced the redemption of Jesus Christ. The redemption of God, the deliverance that He can bring, the salvation that He can bring through Jesus Christ. You may have done this before, you've done church, but this is just more of the same. Just more earning, more effort, another stairway to climb. I'm aware that there are people here that you're a slave to your desires. You don't just have desires, your desires have you. You don't tell them what to do. They're telling you what to do. You think you're here doing your own thing. You're not. You're being told what to do, and you can't stop. I realize that we can be enslaved to fear, unable to operate outside of fear's demands, slave to our appetites. That always comes up when we're trying to fit into bathing suits, right? You can be a slave to what others think. I believe that there are people here, we were praying in pre-service prayer, you're just enslaved to your past. Your past is driving you, and there's nothing you can do. The description that we read of the Israelites is your life. There is something on your heels that keeps pushing you forward. You're a slave to bitterness. You're a slave to unforgiveness. A slave to work. A slave to career. Again, it's not just that you have a career. Having a career is great, but your career has you. It's not just that you have desires. Your desires have you. It's not just that you're hurt. Your hurts have you. They drive you. They push you. You make decisions from that place. They drive and you strive. That's life for you. If you've never experienced, or you just need to experience again, the redemption that comes through Christ, you're striving in your work, but you've never experienced resting in His work, His finished work. You've never experienced the rest that comes from that. You're striving for approval, and you've never experienced the approval that comes from God. You're striving to prove that you're valuable, that you're a player, that you can contribute, but you've never experienced Him saying how very valuable you are. He loves you. He made you. He formed you. He called you. He knows you. You're valuable to Him. Not just as a slave, but as a son and a daughter. If you've never depended on God, and you've always kind of depended on your plan and your effort and your hard work, and it feels like you're on a treadmill and you can't get off, I just would love to pray for you. I believe this isn't like manipulation. You can just receive it however you want to receive it, actually. But as we were praying, I felt like there are 6 people who are going to step into enjoying liberation this morning. I don't know where that came from, but I just started praying specific prayers instead of general prayers, you know. If you are here and you would say, yeah, that's it. I've come to church. I've heard all this stuff maybe before, but I still feel very driven by a taskmaster, and I'm needing to experience the liberation that comes through Christ. Would you just be bold enough to raise your hand? Thanks. Thanks. It's great. Keep it up. It's fine. Would again, those around them, just lay your hands on them. We're just going to pray that the Lord would deliver right now. Thanks for being courageous. You're the heroes of this morning by just expressing weakness. I ask right now, by the power of your Spirit, that you would break the yoke. Break the yoke. Smash the yoke. The consistent accusation from the enemy that keeps driving and pushing and rehearsing and bringing up the past. Silence their enemies. Deal with their oppressors right now, God. Spirit of God, deal with what's pressing in. Deal with what's surrounding. Deal with what's suffocating. I pray right now for a liberty and a freedom in Jesus' name. Trust the work of Jesus and stop. Take away the fears of what it means, what may fall when they stop, what may stop when they stop. The fear of going without the approval of people, the fear of what parents may think, the fear of losing a job, the fear of losing a client, the fear of losing friends, the things that keep pushing and keep persisting. Deal with those, Jesus. I pray right now that you'd put your yoke on your people. Come to me. I'll rest you. I won't put anything ill-fitting on you. I pray, God, for these sheep. These are your sheep. These are your people. And you said that they'd hear your voice. Speak to them. Invite them into a deep, deep place of rest. There remains for those who believe in Christ a Sabbath rest. Rest their souls. Revive their souls. Teach them to take a day to enjoy and delight in you. Liberate them right now. Deliver them in Jesus' name. And everyone said, amen. The irony of Sabbath is this. We're called to mimic God in order to remember that we're not God. Imitate Him so that you never forget that you're not Him. Enslave yourself to the one who brought you out of slavery. Work for the one who created the weekend. Next week, we're going to keep talking about why it's so hard to stop, what's driving us. And is this an Old Testament command or for those who follow Christ? Of course, the question becomes how. Our weeks don't work if we stop. There is no space. Some of you, I had you write minute 2. You were like, yeah, sounds good. I'm in. How? How do we do this? How do we find space? How do we stop? I'm guessing that if you grew up in the church, you either grew up with some real legalistic laws around Sabbath keeping, or it was just ignored altogether, that Christ made this obsolete. And surprise, surprise, Radiant has taken some third position somewhere in the middle. Not legalism for us. This is a delight. Nothing to be ignored. Or ignore it at your own peril. I'll see you guys next week.
Thanks for listening. We want to be a resource for you as you walk with Jesus. So please connect with us at radiantvisalia.com. Until next time.
There is a heavenly city. to find. Oh, I love the flowers and trees and the smell of the grinding sea and all the beautiful things here in life. And I